Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rocket Lab here at Rocket.Chat. Today, we're going to be talking about Docker chains in Rocket.Chat 5.0 version. Right now, you're listening to L Container. It's a music from Transvorder here from the Free Music Archive. And if you like cool music, you can check out this website. I'm going to stop it right now, so I need to increase the volume. And today with us, we have Debdut Chakraborty. Hello, Debdut. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
That's very
I'm
good.
just gonna skip the conditioner bit. Um, the volume was, oh my god, I just mixed volume and audio. The audio is right.
It's good. Now it's good. Today,
Okay.
so we have some chains and a lot of people from forums and also on our open server. There's some issues with Docker, and what is all that about? You have something planned so we can learn a little bit more and try to avoid this kind of issues.
Yeah. So first, like a little bit of story about this issue, right? I was quite surprised when I first heard about it. One of our not one of our customer success head, he reached out to me one evening that, hey, Debdut, this is not working out of the box. The whole Docker thing is broken, right? And I was surprised because just before that day, I actually deployed it because like I deploy Rocket.Chat probably 20 times a day. And I always use Docker, and I did that, and it all went down fine. So I was kind of surprised by what exactly happened. I noticed the error, and it was pretty evident to me what it was, um, and I could give him a solution pretty quick, right? And the reason I was able to know it is because I actually faced the issue a while back when I first started working on like migration of the Docker Compose file, right? Our existing Compose file was quite old, and we decided, hey, I think it's time to move to something a little bit better, especially with the new Docker Compose, the V2. There is some better templating method that we could apply that could really make the end user experience much better. So yeah, we decided on moving, like updating our Docker Compose file, and that was the first time I actually faced that issue, right? So I was quite surprised knowing that this problem is something new, right? For me, it wasn't exactly new. Now that memory is also not exactly that clear, so I don't exactly remember what I did back then. So I'm not gonna like nail down on that. But the issue is actually pretty simple. So there are two kinds of issue you might see, right? The number one is when you see in the Rocket.Chat container. I'm going to show these things like live, sharing my screen. But to give you a gist, there are two kinds of issues. The most common one is the one with connection refused, right? So Rocket.Chat says that, hey, connection refused, we can't connect to MongoDB, right? That's the most common one, and that's the one you're gonna see
Yeah.
facing
Even Mongo running and they cannot connect and people get lost, right? Because well, it's running. I can see that.
exactly. So that's the primary issue that you'll see, and the other one that you might see, but if you see something like this, um, you can guess that that person has something different in their configuration, right? They did something different while deploying Rocket.Chat. So I'm going to get into that as well. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's get into this, okay?
Okay.
But first, let me make sure that I don't have anything sensitive open.
That's a good idea.
Well, that's one of the things that I really like about this Mac. Like when I start sharing my screen, it just stops any kind of notifications by itself, right? That's something I came across very recently, and it was mind blowing to me. So kudos to Apple for that. Okay, I'm hoping that I don't. So if anything surfaces, um,
We can add
you
you in
know,
that.
exactly. Pray to pray for editor God. Uh, okay. entire screen. I'm gonna quickly um, get this one down. So let me know when you can see my screen so
Okay,
I
I
can get
just
started.
okay. Now you are on the middle of it. Yeah, it's good.
All right, that's awesome. So let's start with the terminal. As usual. By the way, this is Kitty. And this is quite good. I wanted to use Alacrity, but Mac was not feeling good about it. Anyway, so I don't have the old compose file, right? So I'm gonna just create the whole Docker compose file for Rocket.Chat from scratch.
Okay.
So let me create a directory right here, naming Rocket.Lab, and then I'm gonna create a Docker compose file. So the version, this is kind of irrelevant. So a lot of people confuse that this is the version of our Rocket.Chat Docker Compose, but
Yes,
it's not.
that's true. That's
It's
that's
very
just the
confusing.
Docker definition version, right?
It's this compose spec version, right? It kind of enables and disables certain features of different compose specification. So it is kind of irrelevant for at least in Rocket Chat case because our compose file is that basic. So anyway, okay. Looks like I'm forgetting things. We don't need any kind of volume, so I think we can just skip all those things. We just need Rocket Chat. So for the image, let's do registry.rocket.chat, rocket.chat, rocket.chat. It's 5.0.1 is the latest one, right? Let's use that one. And we need a port section. Can you hear me? I'm just gonna continue saying that
Yeah, yeah,
randomly.
it's good. Okay,
I'm
so
paranoid.
basically we have basically here a Rocket Chat service. We are not worried about volumes because this is just for demonstration, and
Exactly.
we are using the latest version.
Exactly.
Okay.
I really do not like this part, but I have to do it. For the Mongo URL, MongoDB, let's do Mongo 27017. So Mongo, this in this case, this is going to be the MongoDB service name that we'll see actually in just a bit. And pointing to the database and just make sure that we also point to the replica section.
Okay.
And then we have upload. For this one, we just need to point to local. Okay. And we also need port. It's set to 3000. And that's about all we really need. And for Mongo. So this is the service name. This is the service name that Rocket.Lab is going to resort to the containers IP, right? For the image, I'm gonna just use Mongo 4.4. 4.4 is our supported MongoDB version right now. 4.2 is deprecated, right?
Yeah.
And before, like all the previous versions are now unsupported.
Yeah, and a lot of people sometimes will try to use the 5 version, and it's interesting to be aware that the 5 version has some incompatibilities with some CPU. So maybe you are not able to use the 5 version as of now. But the Mongo 4.4, it has a life cycle until I think the next year. Or
Yeah, 2023, sometime in 2023, I don't remember the exact time.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you're good to go with 4.4.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons we have in our official compose file the default MongoDB version is set to 4.4 instead of 5.
Okay.
Because we just want to make sure that whichever hardware you want to deploy it on, it deploys without any kind of obscure errors. It isn't obscure, but rather ambiguous errors. Like set
Yeah.
fault is not exactly
Yeah,
good error
the
message.
error I have seen from this incompatibility, it just goes like on a seg fault. It does not give a lot, you know, and it was very hard to make the relation with the CPU of the server with the 5 version. So it's good to stay on 4.4. You can try the 5, and if it works, it's going to work. No problems.
Exactly.
But the 4.4 is going to work for the majority. So yeah.
Exactly. All right, so I'm gonna save the file. This is a very basic Docker Compose file that we're gonna use to deploy Rocket.Chat. Now, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna be very sad, right? Like I'm writing cats a day and then I can't write even a single basic Compose file.
Okay, just to make
Oh yeah,
make it clear, this is not for production or anything. This is just to demonstrate the change that we are doing that need to be done on the 5 version, right? So don't use this kind of in production. This is just for illustration.
yeah, definitely don't do that. And by the way, I already figured out one issue.
Okay.
I had to, like, I'm passing the command line options, but I didn't use the dash. So
Okay.
not a good start. But anyway, so let me actually see. Do I even have Docker installed? One second. I mean, I do, but is it in Path? Yeah, it is. So I actually installed Rancher Desktop, and it has its own Docker bundle, right? So yeah. Anyway, let's see. Docker Compose dash D. This should work. I'll just check the logs. And it is waiting for connection. That's good. So now this is like, okay, I'm just going to stop this one more time. Sorry. I also need to actually check if one of the things is currently working or not. Sorry. Yeah, it's going to pull the image.
Yeah, and also one thing that the people who are using here Docker Compose need to notice is that the new version of Docker, and from now on we are going to use Docker space compose and not the command, right? Docker dash compose. So as we know,
Yeah.
Docker is deprecating the Docker dash compose, which is made in Python, I think, in favor of something that is built-in Docker, right? It's the Docker space compose. So now the compose is kind of a module inside Docker itself. I have seen a lot of people
Yes.
trying
So
to
while
spin up our recent Docker using Docker dash compose and having some errors about the network stuff. So be aware. So now we are also updating the documentation whenever possible. It's like docker space compose and then the command.
exactly, yeah. This is actually not too new. V2 has been, if I remember correctly, V2 has been in the works for over 2 years, right? Over two
Oh,
years or
really?
something, right?
I
So
didn't know.
it's not.
I only noticed that like 4 months ago.
Yeah, I believe so. Like, although don't quote me on that, but I think I can just check it. Yeah, I can actually check it right now. If I check this file's history, it should point me to exactly when. Um, but it will be quite old, though. I mean, a lot of like older clicks. But anyway, I'm not gonna actually do that. I'm not gonna go through all of those, but
Yeah, just be aware that now there's no on the future is not going to be another Docker dash compose to install or something. You're going to use only Docker, and everything you need is already there into the Docker.
yeah, exactly. Docker Compose or the V2 of Compose, this is actually already pre-packaged in Docker Desktop. So if you're using Windows, I don't know why you would use Windows. Sorry, but if you're using Windows or if you're using Mac and you install uh, Compose should be pre-installed. And if you're on Linux, the standard package, if you set up the Docker's official repositories for Debian or RHEL-based distros, whichever, the official package name is Docker dash compose dash plugin, right? Docker dash compose dash plugin. So yeah, you can just install it directly from the package manager and it will just work. Right? It's that simple.
Okay.
And we do require it for the new Docker compose file. and this is not feeling good. It looks like it's gonna take a while. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
My internet connection is not exactly too good.
okay. Yeah, it's improving. Oh no, there's 200
Oh yeah.
and something. That's a lot.
It's improving. No, it's not.
It
Yeah.
was.
And
Well, yeah, and
uh,
one thing that is interesting is that we can talk about this change on the Docker Compose, and because before we had three services, right? We had one service only to initiate the replica set, and now we have only two services, right?
yes, yes. Um, I want to go through the new compose file, but I actually want to do it by the end
Ah,
to
okay,
also like cover what it does differently and why this issue will not surface in the new compose file.
okay.
And also maybe talk about migration at the same time, right? I think we could do that unless it goes over time. In that case, you can schedule a separate time and do that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, also meanwhile we can a lot. I just got this question the other day. Why Docker instead of Snap? What is the differences, and what do you think as a deployment specialist? What is the difference that can make you choose Snap or Docker over each other?
oh, that's a really good question. This is kind of in the document in our documentation. Like if any of you haven't like gone through the documentation in a long time, you probably should. It has sections around these. It has kind of scorecards. It describes in what situation you would want to use one over the other. So Docker is something that I recommend to anyone, right? If you are new, if you are a seasoned system administrator, it doesn't really matter. Whoever you are, you can really quickly pick up Docker, especially with Docker Compose, and especially with the new Docker Compose file that we have. It's extremely easy to adopt it and get started with it. So it has like any advantage you can think of, it has it. It is easy to deploy, it is quick, it is actually battle tested, right? Our CI uses the Docker Compose file exclusively for the tests,
Yeah,
right? It is extremely easy to create, it is easy to back up, it is easy to restore, it is easy to manage. So overall, Docker is like an all-rounder, right? There is really no reason to not use it, probably, except for probably, I don't know. If you are trying to deploy on Mac, even though I would say Docker is a good idea, but you could bring up some different argument. But overall, there really is no practical reason to not use Docker.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, one thing I like is that
another
there's a lot of users that has the manual install, which is like downloading the source code and running it. And whenever we change the node versions or some any other kind of dependencies, that's on you, right? That's on the system administrator to change that and update and upgrade and do all that. And with Docker, what I
yeah
most like it is that you have everything together. You have the node version, we have all the dependencies, everything is there. You does not need to worry about that at all. That's
yeah that is definitely one of the strongest parts. And sorry, and when while I say this, I also it is also coming to my mind, like, crossing my mind is that there are going to be some viewers who would say that, okay, that is the downside, not exactly the upside. I, I'm not going to argue on that area, but yeah, Docker is like an all rounder. Now, coming to Snap, yeah, exactly what I thought. This is something happening on my Docker actually. 1 second. So let me just quickly go through this one. So just stop. Do I have mongodb? So this is not part of the demo. This is
okay.
what happens when demo got done with you.
Yeah, that's I hear you because I also have like tons of Docker images and containers and networks. And the other day I said, okay, I did a network prune. I removed everything because it was affecting my navigation and everything. So I was like, okay, I need to restart all my my networks and did some pruning. I
Yeah, I just
you
stopped
stopped
this.
the screen share.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I have the Docker desktop downloaded. I just want to install it real quick.
Okay.
As long as
Also,
it wants to.
another good thing about the using Docker while you install that is that one thing I like using the forums and helping our community in the forums is that when you're using Docker, you has the same environment as the majority of our other community users. So it's way easier to have your issue relating to other user issue. So usually when you go, for example, with a manual install, from the tarball, the issues you have may be specific to your deployment, to your server, right? And it's sometimes I see on the forums people, oh, I have this problem, and by looking at it, they say, okay, this is probably something with the node version or something with the something very specific to that host. And with the Docker, you have the most possible way to have the same environment as other users, so the errors that you see, the logs and everything is more similar to other people, so it's easier to get help, right? Community help.
Yeah, I think community support is one of the big proponents that I personally like to advocate, right? Whenever you are choosing a tool, whenever you are choosing ecosystem, a framework, a method for deployment, I think it's one of the crucial, like one of the most important things you can think of is, hey, if I'm choosing XYZ, how much support can I get from the community with it, right? For it. So I think that is one of the most crucial things. So for manual install, you can get support. I'm not saying you can't. Manual install, I think, has a really good support from the community, but the problem is that each environment can be different. I'm not saying it essentially is, but it can be different, and that creates a problem. That creates a lot of in terms of figuring out what the exact issue is, and introduces a lot of guesswork, right? Because if you think about it, no one really gives a good bug report. No one gives a really good description of what the exact issue is, how someone can reproduce it, etc. So it introduces a lot of guesswork, and when you use a tool like Docker or even Snap for that matter, um, you introduce something that like takes away that uniqueness that your environment could have, right? It creates like a similar environment across all devices. So anything that applies to one environment should theoretically apply to others.
Yeah.
Again, there are exceptions. That's why I'm using the safer terms, should, could, etc., and not must. So it definitely makes even the community's job, our jobs, much easier when the person who is asking for support, hey, man, this is not working, this is broken, and that person has something that kind of way that ambiguity, right? It takes away that, it transfers that whole layer to other tools like Snap or Docker, right? That those tools now have to handle that specificity of their environment. So we don't have to care about that. We can just talk about Rocket.Chat, how that matters, right? How you actually deploy it, fix it yourself on it. So definitely.
Yeah, you basically get into the boat
And
of a lot of people, right? If you deploy that on some on manual way, or some other methods, you may be on a boat with fewer people. But while using Docker and everything, you are not only on the boat with a lot of other people that can help you, but also everybody is on the same situation, the same environment and everything.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I installed the Docker desktop thing. It is currently downloading the images again, different location and everything. So while it does that, I'm gonna just quickly talk about Snap. and where I think it shines and where I think it kind of sucks. Snap is the deployment method or deployment distribution that I personally have a love and hate relationship with. Right? I love how unique it is. Right? I really love how unique it is. I love its behavior in many ways. I love the fact that I can automate a lot of things in it, right? But the point at which I kind of start hating it is at the same time, as much as I like automating stuff in it, for example, updating MongoDB, backing off stuff, etc. At the same time, that is kind of also a problem at certain times. It makes it very hard because for Snap, it forces us to automate things, right? We can't have the users do manual stuff and like do the migration themselves, update MongoDB by themselves, right? We can't have that. We have to do that ourselves. So at certain times, it kind of makes the job a little bit hard, having to do really complicated stuff, things that we could like let the community handle like smartly, right? We don't have to do a lot of guesswork because every time you do guesswork, there's a chance of breaking stuff. So it boats some risk at certain times. Now, saying that, we really haven't had that serious a situation yet. Like if any one of you is watching this and thinking, okay, this is risky, Snap is risky. Not exactly. Not exactly. What I'm saying is the nature of Snap. That's what I don't like. Now, when do I think that people should use Snap? If you don't want to manage your install at all, right? I think the only benefit Snap has over Docker, in my honest opinion, is automatic updates, right? Snap has this whole thing like one command install. Well, yes, you can literally just use one command. It will set up everything, and your Rocket.Chat installs will be running in no time. Definitely. And Docker has a little more commands. I agree, like installing Docker, downloading a Compost file, setting up the .env file, then pulling and deploying the containers. Okay, but it's still extremely straightforward, right? I think the whole one click, one command, install methods, etc. Those are very much overrated, right? It's just too much overrated. As long as the steps are not 10 steps, 20 steps, as long as the steps are like in the smaller range, 1.5, somewhere around that, or even maybe more than that with an appropriate logic behind it. As long as those steps are understandable, clean, and the documentation is really explaining what those steps are doing, I think it's fine, right? I think it's totally fine. So that's why I don't consider Snap having an advantage on that one-click thing. And also, we are already updating Rocket.Chat CTL, the shell script that you can use to install Rocket.Chat manually with just the script, like one command deployment of Rocket.Chat, like manual deployment for Rocket.Chat. We're also adding like a module to it, a Docker module that would do the same thing, like just a single command, like it will deploy Rocket.Chat using Docker. So the script will install Docker, set up your environment, and deploy deploy Rocket.Chat, which is a single command, right? So essentially, that will take away that whole pseudo advantage of one-click deployment of snaps.
It's
As
kind
I
of the
said, the
best of
only
the both worlds, right? You're going to have a command that's going to kind of manage Rocket Docker for you, right? So
yeah,
for example, for doing a backup, you will have a Docker CTL that's going to do the Docker command for you, right?
kind of, yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's good.
That's the plan. Overall, I think Snap doesn't have too many advantages, except for the fact that if you don't really want to do anything with your deployment, you just want to deploy it and be done with it, right? You just want to go to your browser, get to the address, and just be done with it, right? If you want something like that, okay, I think that's when Snap shines. If that's not your use case, just go for Docker,
Yeah.
and never look back. It's
Yeah,
also easy to
I have seen a
overall.
lot of users in the forums, for example. They come with the snap and I say, really, if you're starting now, deploying now, take a look at Docker. And usually they say, oh, I never used Docker, but let me try. And then a couple days later, okay, I deployed in Docker. I'm good to go now. And
Exactly.
then it's not a big barrier, right? From someone
No,
that never played with Docker, it's a little bit strange a little bit in the beginning, but then you get the hang out of it. It's easier, right? It's way easier than
exactly.
options.
Exactly. All right. So my images are downloaded. I think
Good.
we have. Yeah. Let's just get into it. Let's just
Let's
get into the
get
main
it done.
topic.
So it's nice because let me just change the layout here. It's good that we are planning to have this Docker, some Docker demonstrations and some deployment
Mhm.
for a long time. So that's a good opportunity for it. So okay, so now what we have here, we have the Docker Compose, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so that's new. You're now spinning it up again, right?
Yes. Now, what I'm gonna do in general, what users would do if they have a Docker Compose file, they would just do Docker Compose up dash D,
Yeah.
right? But in this case, I'm not gonna do that because this will bring up both of the services, right? I don't want to do that. What I want is I just want to start with Mongo.
Okay.
So, and the goal of Rock or like sorry, the goal of Docker Compose is to like do most of the things already, and all you have to do is just run the upd command, and you can just go to your browser and just start using Rocket.Chat, right? But in this case, what I'm doing is I'm kind of taking the manual approach with Docker Compose. So I'm gonna spin up every single container manually, right? Configure things manually, right? So that I can actually show you where something is going wrong.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna start up Mongo. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get into the container. So exec Mongo dash. So I'm in the MongoDB container. Then I'm gonna get into the MongoDB shell. Let me just clear the screen.
Yeah. Can
And
you increase
so
the size of
yeah,
the font a little bit? Yeah, nice.
yeah, okay. So one of the things that you have to do with Rocket.Chat, like the steps, you install MongoDB, right? Then you start MongoDB with Replica Set, right? So basically, you either enable it in the configuration file, or what I have basically done. So I'm gonna just quickly show it one more time. Uh, Basically, what I've done here, I'm passing the command dash dash repl set rs0. So essentially, it would look something like this: MongoD dash dash repl set rs0, right? So rs0 is the replica set IP, or you could consider replica set name, right? So this is basically the command that the container is running, right? So I'm starting MongoDB in the replica set mode with the replica set name rs0. Now I'm gonna get into the MongoDB container one more time. And what we want to do now is we want to initiate the replica set, right? We've started it in the replica set mode, but we have to initiate the replica set configuration. So what is replica set configuration? There are a lot of things, but in general, what you need to think or understand is the most atomic representation could be explained as a replica set config is basically a set or list of its members, right? So I won't get into what exactly a replica set is. I would recommend reading up on the MongoDB documentation. But essentially, replica set is a collection of MongoDB servers, right, that replicates the data across all nodes. Now, we don't want that specifically in Rocket.Chat. We want the oplog feature, right, the chain stream feature. But anyway, I won't get into that because that will complicate the whole thing. Right now, we want to initiate the replica set config. So rs dot initiate, and then let's pass it some things. We want to pass it an object with an ID. The ID is going to be replica set ID, exactly the one that we passed to MongoDB, the actual MongoDB server. Okay. And then we want to set it, so give it some members as a list or an array. with same thing, one of its members. So let's start with 0 and a host. And the host is basically the host name or an IP address colon the port at which MongoDB is running. Now, in this case, what should I do, right? Do that. You have your Rocket Connect, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So inside of Rocket Connect, you have your DockerCompose file, right?
It's updated already with the new one.
Oh no.
But you can probably see the some times ago. Let me see if
I
there's.
actually know. Okay, there is a GitHub issue. There is a GitHub issue where actually, yeah, right here. This is actually the exact issue. So I'm
Yeah,
actually explaining this exact issue. So that's good. There is the Docker Compose file right here. Let me see. Please tell me I didn't say it wrong. Feels like I saw it wrong. 1 second, there should be another one. This is a very weird video. Sorry.
no worries, but I think that people will enjoy because there's a lot of information here, and that's good. And that's the idea of the Rocket Lab. If you guys are not following here, so Rocket Lab is a webinar and some sessions talking about all things that we can do in Rocket Chat. So if you can integrate some stuff, if you develop some stuff, some app, or any other kind of information that you want to share, so feel free. There's a repo here in Rocket Chat organization in GitHub. So if you want to propose some topic or something, please don't be shy and send it to us. And if you want to participate too, feel free. Okay, so is
All right.
that's it? This is the old one, right? This the
Yes,
old.
yes.
Okay,
This is my personal fork. Yeah, I forgot. I had a personal fork. So yeah, in here, what you'll see is that this is the Mongo service, right? This is the one that I'm kind of using right now,
okay,
just a stripped down version. And this is the service that actually sets up the replica set, right? So you'll see that this is basically a script. What it does is it connects to the MongoDB service, which is this one. You can see the mouse, right?
yeah, yeah,
Mouse pointer.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the one it is this service or this Mongo client is connecting to, and then it is executing this simple command rs.initiate, giving it an ID of rs0. And for members, ID0, and the host is pointing to localhost 27017. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Right, I'm going
Okay,
to set the host localhost 27017, and we're done. We can close it. And OK, 1, so non-zero means it succeeded. And if I press enter a couple more times, I just had to do it once. You'll see that now this node is the primary replica set node, right?
okay,
So I can exit out of this container. Now what I'm going to do, now I am going to start Rocket.Chat, right? And wait. Now I'm actually going to make the font a little smaller because it's going to be a lot of error outputs, right? So
like
larger font
indexes
will
and
make
everything, right?
and
Until the good old box, it's done.
it
I
won't
always
show up.
expect for I really like that box when Rocket Chat is running, so you have the box. That's a good indicator, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this is okay, so we have it. Uh,
This is the error, right?
okay, yeah,
This is
that's
the
the
error
error
that
that on the forums on GitHub and everything. That's the problem. That's exactly. And people get confused
connection.
because Mongo is running, right?
Yes, but why is it saying connection refused? If you look at it, right, if you look at the error a little bit closely, you'll see that Rocket Chat is not exactly trying to connect to the MongoDB container, which is odd and surprising. Look at this. It is actually not trying to connect to the Rocket Chat container. It is trying to connect to localhost.
Yeah.
It is trying to connect 127.0.0.1. And inside of Rocket Chat container, localhost is its own container, right? and no MongoDB is running, process is running inside of the Rocket.Chat container. So not just MongoDB, nothing is really running in that port, in that container. And connection refused, right? There is no server that is listening.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the first clue to understanding that, well, what exactly is the issue? Now, with this, you might think that, well, maybe in that case, our Mongo URL is incorrect. So I'm going to get into that. And you'll see that, no, it's not, because
Yeah.
it is pointing to Mongo. It's not pointing to localhost or anything, right? So that definitely is not wrong. Now, another thing that you can look into is right here, the error class, right? It is something that this Tmux is annoying sometimes. So this is another thing that I think everyone should kind of glance at when they are trying to debug some issue. So what is this? This is the error class. Sometimes the message could be something, but when you see actually the name of the error class, that will make things a little bit clearer. When you see Mongo server selection error, does that mean that it actually failed to connect or something else? If it actually had failed to connect, it would have shown Mongo network error, right? We
That's
just
right.
couldn't connect. Server selection error more means that, well, we could kind of connect, but we couldn't we couldn't select the server. When you think about Mongo replica set, there are multiple servers, right? Even though we just had one node, because we were just running one container, there could be more than one, right? So Mongo, like the node driver, essentially, it has to select a primary. And that's what the error is. It couldn't select a server, right? When it tried to select a server, it got connection refused. So that means that it actually kind of connected,
Yeah.
but some around from the initial connection to confirming that, okay, I have connected to a primary, it failed. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And you will see if you go a little bit down right here, error, Mongo network error. Now this is the actual error, no, sorry, not the actual error, but this is what I mean, like network error. So this means that it actually couldn't just connect. But when you look at server selection error, that doesn't mean that, well, it just didn't connect at all. So now I think we have a good understanding that, well, there is something wrong, right? But it isn't exactly what most people think at the very beginning, that something is wrong with the Docker Compose file. You know, it's not exactly the Docker Compose file per se. So let's talk about what exactly is happening. So I'm going to show something slightly different. Okay, so this is something that is part of the MongoDB node driver, right? So the node modular package, or whatever you call it, is used in any kind of project. Okay? So what I'm going to show you is that I have a small script, right? So I pulled in the MongoDB node driver, and I put in some print statements, right? I put in just some print statements so that I can show you what exactly happens when we're trying to connect. Okay. So let me figure out what it is. It's a document, random, then node, MongoDB driver playground. Okay. This is the one. So so Duda, one quick question. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of using Vim, but I understand that sometimes it kind of is easier for viewers to use some other editor. People have asked me that, so I'm just confirming whether I should use something else or just
No,
stick with whatever I want.
yeah, it's good.
Okay, that's correct. So this is the simple script, right? What you see is that we are importing Mongo. Okay, I should probably say that even if you are not into, if you're just a sysadmin and you're not into stuff like this, I think it's still kind of helpful to, understand a little bit. So it is nothing fancy. Essentially, we are just putting in the connection string, right? Um, just one quick thing. You'll see that in the connection string, I have MongoDB instead of localhost, right? Why is that? Sorry. So first thing that I'm going to actually do is come back here and open the Docker Compose file. I'm going to add a ports section to it. Okay.
Okay.
Why? Because this Rocket.Chat could connect to MongoDB without anything because it's in the same compose file, it's in the same network, right? But right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to deploy MongoDB, right? But I want to connect to that MongoDB container or the MongoDB process from my host,
Yeah,
right?
from that
So
script, right?
yeah, I want to bind it to my host that my host can connect to it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just
And
do
then when you call
270.
like localhost to this port, you are actually talking with this Mongo there, right?
Right.
Okay.
So now I actually hate the fact that I didn't set up a volume because I have to go through the replica set config one more time.
It came to bite you.
If you don't like it. Actually, although I actually have to do it one more time anyway, so let me just.
Oh yeah, because it's recreating, right? The container because of the change.
I hate it so much.
It's okay.
No, just skip this part, guys.
Well, yeah, but I think it probably the ones that are more sysadmin, they probably spot the problem right there already, right? So
Exactly.
as I understand here, because I was kind of looking at this kind of errors. Uh, I think the code was not properly host. I think there's more stuff there. No. So
Okay.
I first saw the problem and was like, okay, what's going on? Okay. Uh, but then now it's clear. And the problem with these, and we have a lot of users from our community, is that it's difficult to spot these and understand because everything was working perfectly, and then you upgrade to the 5 version and can't connect anymore, right? So okay, so
Exactly.
this script it's going to try to connect to local host, right? Should be there, no?
It should be local host. That's what I'm trying to kind of show you real quick. So I
Okay.
actually have in my Etsy hosts. So I
Ah,
have a
okay.
different. I have a mapping from my loopback address to a new host named MongoDB. So this is important for
Okay.
showing me exactly what I'm talking about, right? So I'm actually going to 1 second. I'm actually going to change it to something else because I think it is kind of a little bit ambiguous, right? Like MongoDB // MongoDB. I'm just going to change it to demo.
Okay.
So that will make it a bit easier. And then I'll change this to demo. Okay. So because in my Etsy hosts, demo is pointing to my loopback address, which is 127.0.0.1. So that is what essentially this script will connect to, which should work because I've already like bound the containers port to my hosts, right? So yeah, that is the host name I'm choosing. And then I have the option for replica set. So this is similar, like passing it like this is similar to doing this. Replica set equals to RLC, all right? It's the same thing.
Ah, okay. And you
Simple
already on
for,
the URL, you can set the replica set already from the URL.
yeah, that's for the Mongo URL, like passing it as query, but for Mongo client, we're doing it like this.
Okay.
And then we are connecting, and then we're just closing. That's it. It's connect and close. The goal is because the driver I'm using right now, that is a local build with some print messages, console logs, print line, printf, etc. Whatever, you know. So essentially, the goal is that the driver will spit out some output right
Okay.
in the middle of connecting and closing. That will give us a better understanding of what's going on behind the scenes, right? So I'm gonna save it, and if I, for example, show you my package.json, you'll see that MongoDB is pointing to my local repository, right? So if I run yarn start, which will just start the script, and we wait. So a lot of output, right? In general, you shouldn't see this much output.
Yeah.
But and I also for like didn't I was kind of lazy about it. I didn't clean it up. So,
I just print
sorry.
everything and let's see what what's going on.
Yeah. So the first thing that happens is when we have this whole Mongo URL, you know, the driver, it connects directly to the address that is given, right? So it is demo colon 27017, it is MongoDB colon 27017, etc. It just directly connects to that server, right?
Okay.
And the server responds with its host address. You'll see that it's responding. You'll see, oh God, this is annoying.
That's a lot.
I can't select anything. Actually, yeah, anyway. So you'll see that this is incoming server description, right?
Okay.
It connected to it. MongoDB said, okay, here is my server description, how many hosts I have, etc. You'll see that the host address is demo, the exact one that we passed, that we wanted to connect to.
Okay.
And then the type is primary, replica set primary. The host, you see that the host is localhost 27017. Why is that? Now you might ask. If I come back and get into the MongoDB container one more time, start it,
Okay.
and I write rs.config, right? This will print out everything like the whole config, but I just want the members part, right? And I
Okay.
list it. The host is actually localhost 27017. Right. So MongoDB, it just took the replica set config, the server list or the host list, just sent it. Okay. Just sent it. Sorry. By the way, this is Marcelo's son.
Oh,
This is
really?
cute.
So
Yeah,
cute.
this is like
Using Firefox already.
yeah, I got it and I had to make it like the wallpaper.
That's very good.
Anyway. So yeah, that is the host spot, right? That is the host spot. That is pointing to localhost
Hmm.
27017, right? Now, before I actually move on, I want to clarify this and kind of make it a little clearer. Okay, so that's why I'm not gonna go through the rest of the output. I'm just gonna clear my screen. Okay, and I'll get to this part again. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reconfigure it. Right,
Hmm.
I'm gonna reconfigure with a different host name just to confirm that what I'm saying is exactly right because you can't exactly see the code, right? So let's just confirm it real quick. So the way we reconfigure it is rs.config, right? Set it to a configuration a variable and config.members, members. Then we have only one member, so I'm indexing by 0, and then the host name, we're gonna set it to Mongo, right? So this host name must be a host name that the server, the MongoD server or the Mongo server can actually connect to, right? So this host name needs to be something that is resolvable, right? Something that actually can connect to. For example, if I make a demo 27017, right? I think we both know that something is running in a similar host name, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
existing MongoDB server is connected to my local host at this port, right? But this will fail because inside of the container demo, this hostname resolves to nothing,
Yeah.
right? The
That's right.
container doesn't know about demo, so it will fail.
Okay.
So
So
that's
it
why I'm
needs to be
just
a host that is accessible both from Rocket.Chat and Mongo within the network. So this on this example here, demo is not going
jumping
to
ahead.
work.
You're jumping ahead, but
Oh,
yeah, that
sorry.
is exactly correct. Right, that is
Okay.
exactly correct.
Yeah.
But just for the demonstration, I'm just going to use Mongo. So this is the service name, right? This is the service name of this container, or more so, really the Docker, the entry of this container inside of the Docker Compose. And this is something that this container can actually resolve, right? It is accessible from this container. So this won't exactly fail. Now I'm going to do rs.reconfig.
Oh yeah, I was
Config.
asking, don't you need to save something or just okay, reconfig will is going to
Yeah,
apply the
exactly.
config again. Okay, makes
Exactly.
sense.
I'm going to hit enter. Okay, once it worked. Now, okay, I'm just sorry. Now, if I run yarn start one more time,
Okay.
and let me just scroll up, and scroll up. A lot of output. Okay, now you can see that the server address demo, but the host is actually pointing to
Okay.
Mongo 27017, right? So at the initial connection, the server actually spits out, okay, this is my server, like all the hosts that I have in my replica set, and do whatever you want to do with it. Okay, so that's kind of the general idea. Now I'm going to actually change this one to localhost just quickly, reconfigure it,
Okay.
and clean it up and run yarn start one more time. That was just for demonstration, the last bit. And I'm gonna scroll up real hard. Okay, so now back at the top. So demo is the primary connection string, and it is still pointing to 1 second. I think I just scrolled up too much.
Yeah, it's still pointing to Mongo, right? It was
Yeah,
maybe.
right. Okay, so this is the demo, right? And the
Hmm.
host says localhost 017. Now let's scroll back. Let's scroll a little down. Now we have another one. So existing servers. So inside, I'm gonna have to kind of abstract away a lot of things, right? Now I'm no master of the Node.js driver. I just literally installed it today and added all these things. So no master, no. Don't hold me responsible for anything if I say anything technically incorrect. but I'm gonna take away a lot of things, like abstract away a lot of things. So inside of the driver, it keeps track, like there is an internal state, it keeps track of all the servers that it currently has, right? It's a map, as you can see, like
Hmm.
a map. And the key is the host address, and it points to a server object. And the server object has a lot of things. It's essentially an event emitter, but that's the idea. So right after this, I'm printing out, I'm kind of logging the existing server list. And really what we need to see is the keys, right? We don't need to see all these things, just the keys. So we have in the existing server map demo 27017, and if I scroll down, nothing, right? So that's all we have. So in the next step, you'll see that it is destroying an entry. So what exactly does that mean? So in the first step, you saw that we got a lot of hosts, right? We got a lot of hosts. And after a while, the driver actually goes to the host list, and it checks that I have this internal database, right? I have this internal state where I have all these servers, and I have this server list that I got from the server, like the main MongoDB server, right? And if anything that doesn't match, right? If anything that doesn't match, it basically like removes it, right? It basically removes it. So that's kind of the general idea. So destroying entry. So if I scroll a little bit down, you'll see that this is kind of the state, right? This is what it essentially is destroying. And you will see that the address is demo 27017, right? So it is removing this host because it is not part of that list, right? It is not like this address, this specific string is not part of that host list. So it is just removing it.
Okay.
If I get down a little, now this is actually the longest part. Sorry about not removing it. And then you'll see that incoming server description. So this is another similar event where the MongoDB server is actually sending some server description. It is one of the hosts, right? And we'll see that this is of type primary. So this is the replica set primary, and the address is
The local host.
exactly.
Okay.
Now, if I
And then it,
scroll
it
down,
got destroyed too, probably, right?
this won't be destroyed because the
Oh yeah, that's
existing host list has localhost, right?
it's on the
It
member,
is in
right?
the exactly. It is a member, and you can see that existing servers. It now points to localhost. It doesn't have the Mongo entry anymore. And now the most important part. So when we are running that, client.close, it is actually closing the connection. I am logging the exact server that it is basically connected to, right? Because we just have one. And you'll see that the one that is actually connected to is localhost 27017, right? So this is actually more than one server. So this is actually just listing the internal state. But because we just have one server or one node in the replica set, we just have one server. So essentially that is what it is connected to, right? There is no rocket science here. And so what is it exactly connected to? localhost 27017. Okay, so
Okay.
what exactly is the takeaway? If I take a look at the code one more time, you'll see that I'm in the code, I'm connecting to demo 27017, but in actuality or in reality, it just is connecting to localhost because that is what is in the replica set configuration, right? So now I think it is pretty clear why it is failing, right? If I do Docker Compose up Rocket.Chat and quickly see the output, like, dude, you already caught it. I think most viewers, most adept viewers, um, sysadmins or anyone, I think they would have understood it quite a while ago as well. You know, I don't think I had to do all that stuff, but I think it's still helpful for those who are not that adept, where especially when you think about people not being comfortable around Docker, you know.
Yeah,
So
and also it's a good opportunity to have a deep dive into how things works, you know, uh, because we can say that there's a lot of people that doesn't has a lot of the sysadmin knowledge, but they still manage to deploy and do all that. But when
yeah,
it comes to this kind of errors, it's too deep for them, you know. So I think this is important to show them how it works, how it's all in control, and now the takeaway that how we can easily fix that, and I think that's the a very important part, right?
oh, yeah. Every time I think whenever an error occurs, a general suggestion I would have for everyone is just to read it. You know, even though I think we have a bad reputation, Rocket Chat, in terms of error messages. Unhandled promise, rejection error, um, undefined something, blah, blah, blah. Like these kinds of big, huge errors, like people think that they wouldn't understand, but I say just read it, right? It might seem like code, but it doesn't have to be. Just read it. You know? It's just English words. Like, for example, reason, topology description. Oh, come on, teammates, don't do this. Um, reason, topology description, type, replica set, not primary, Mongo server selection error. Right? You know, just read it out
Yeah.
loud, and we'll have good enough understanding that way.
Yeah, you still
Um,
need to have a like a background on how things work.
yeah,
But once
but
you
it's
know
still
all that you showed for us today, like okay, now I see what's the error here. And if I change these now, if you change the members and remove the local host, for example, it's going to work fine, right?
it's also I think kind of helpful if you really read it out loud all by yourself because even if you can't fill out let's say a bug template 100%, even if you can't explain it too technically, when someone actually tries to follow up, when someone tries to explain it to you, if you actually read it, you know, line by line, try to at least figure it out in your head, like Mongo server selection error. You know, you could translate it to an English sentence. Mongo server tried to select something and it errored out. You know,
Hmm.
you could just translate it in your head. And when you do that, someone who technical actually answers to your question or your ticket, and it often happens that they really doesn't have the time or really couldn't explain it very easily, right? Sometimes it just happens, you know. But if you actually read it out loud, you'll have a much better time understanding because if you even if you don't understand what exactly these mean, you'll create like a mental image and it will have holes. And when someone else answers your questions, it'll fill those holes in right then. Right, you'll have a much better time understanding what others are saying. Right? It's just a good practice, in my opinion. It helps everyone, not just you, even the person who's trying to help you.
Okay, so
Um,
and now what are the, because I saw in the release that we had one possibility to
yeah,
solve that.
I'm gonna get into.
And there's, I
I'm
think
gonna get
there's,
into.
you mentioned there's other options to solve these, right? So if
Yeah,
you have, if I have, for example, already deployed Rocket Chat, and so the problem here, if I face these while upgrading to the version 5, is that because inside my replica set is there local host instead of the Mongo, right?
exactly,
Okay, so
exactly.
how we can fix that, for because if the person are using on a single replica set, it's probably easier, right, to fix this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, there are a couple of points. So I'm going to start with like fixing this one. What we basically want to do is get into the container, right? I'm just
Okay.
going to directly get into Mongo shell. And exactly the same thing like we did. We already did the reconfiguration. We just want to save it into a config variable, rs.config.
Okay. So you're basically getting all the definition of the config that
Yeah,
as it is right now and changing the
yeah,
members, right?
exactly. So I'm going to do config for members. So this is going to be all the members.
Okay.
And then I'm going to,
You get the first member and change
yeah,
the host.
yeah, and then just get into the host.
Awesome.
And I don't want to use the replace function, but it's just I think it's easier to change it manually. Now in this case, basically, yeah, we need to change it to Mongo, but a big but, something we have to understand is that this is not exactly Mongo per se, right? What we want to do, what host name we want to give it is the service name of your MongoDB container,
Yeah.
right? This is the
By
primary
by
thing, right?
default,
Because
it's Mongo, right? From our last
yeah,
DockerCompose and
yeah,
for the yeah, but it
yeah,
may
for
be
our
different depending on how you used, right? Okay, yeah, that's the
exactly,
host that it becomes a host inside Docker network.
exactly. That's a it's a host that becomes resolvable or accessible inside of the whole
And that's
project.
awesome, right?
Compose.
I think Docker is awesome. This kind of little stuff, it's very nice. It's very good.
Exactly. You don't know.
Okay, so
Project.
you are now changing the config, and then you're doing the reconfig stuff, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
and
So now
that's
I have
fixed.
like
Oh no no.
if I print out the whole config, you'll see all set. These things ignore the host is Mongo 27017, right? So that's done.
And then you
All
need
we
the
have to do
reconfig.
is
Yeah,
yeah,
rs
yeah,
reconfig and config. Okay, good.
and then I just exit out. Now nothing to do because your container is already failing. What you need to do is
Spin it up
restart
again.
Rocket.
Yeah.
In my case, I'm just going to off Rocket, right? And let's see if it succeeds or not. This is a very boring part.
It's probably doing the
Right?
stuff. Yeah, and you can't do Control C or check the logs and say, okay, come on, go. I want to check the logs.
Yeah. Do you know what time it is for me right now?
Uh,
Just for fun. Guess.
oh, I need to add here. I don't even know what time is it for me. For me, it's like 3 and almost 4 hours. So for you, it's probably like 5 hours ahead. No,
It is 12:17 a.m. It's
PM, right?
12 at night.
Midnight, after midnight.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. Anyway, you can see it's running, right? It's starting up.
Yeah, it's
No,
already
there's nothing.
did the connection and no errors now. Okay, so
Yeah,
that's one way
exactly.
to fix it, right? Like you can go
Yes.
into Mongo and change the members of the replica set configuration. Good.
Hmm. Yes. So that's one way, and this is like if you actually understood the whole process, you would understand that this is a fix. This is an actual fix. Now there is a workaround. There is a workaround. How do we know that? Let's see. So if I go to github.com/rocketchat, rocketchat releases, then the tag
Yeah,
5.0.
the important notes. I keep that's probably an easier way to fix, right? Uh, but I think
Yes,
changing
we can see.
it will all work on the end, but changing the replica set members, I think it's more like the good way
Yeah,
to go, right?
yeah. So this is kind of the workaround. So this actually just changes the topology of what should I say, the connection or the network. Sorry, the whole network situation. It just changes the topology to direct connection. I'm sorry, it's single. The topology name is single. So what happens when you pass in direct connection is that it just ignores everything, right?
The
It just
selection,
ignores the whole, yeah, connection step.
Okay.
It just takes whatever is in the Mongo URL and it just connects directly to it. Right? It
Okay.
just takes that host and directly just uses that host. Right. So it doesn't really matter if you have um, some other host name or whatever. It really doesn't matter what is in your replica set configuration. As long as the Rocket.Chat container can resolve the host name that is in Mongo URL with
Okay.
direct connection, it just work.
Yeah.
This is the quickest solution. Just changes the topology, just gets rid of the whole server selection stuff, and just connects directly. Now there are some downsides. Okay, there are some
Yeah.
downsides.
I'm already
So
thinking here.
yeah, first thing I'm gonna say is the biggest problem with direct connection is that it won't work when you have multiple
Oh, okay.
nodes. Right? When you have
Yeah.
multiple nodes, for multiple nodes, single is not the topology. You cannot apply single topology. It will still connect, but it will fail. Right? I'm gonna talk about that in just a bit. Um,
But
but another
if you
thing,
have like a two replica set, for example, so if you set up the direct connection, it's going to ignore the second replica set, or it's going to fail, or
yes, it's going to ignore the second one. Just connect to its first
the
one,
first one.
and the
All the
problem with
load is going. It's not going to load the balance the load, right? It's going directly to the first one.
yeah, it's not exactly load balancing. That's actually a different one. That's not the same. It's more about the replica set primary, right? It just gets a server list and selects what the primary is, like the one that really does the writing, right?
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah, okay.
But
Yeah,
when it
it's not
ignores,
technically load balancing, so it's like
yeah, yeah,
uh task separation.
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, when it ignores all of the other ones, the problem is that what if the second entry in that Mongo URL is actually the primary? So Rocket.Chat will end up connecting to the secondary code, right? And it will fail because it cannot write, right? So this is the problem with direct connection. If you use direct connection with sorry multiple nodes, right?
Okay.
Now the other thing to mention is that this whole where is it? Localhost configuration. If you have a localhost configuration in your replica set config, you cannot actually have another replica set member with a different host name. So it's kind of a technical limitation or a MongoDB limitation. So if you have multiple nodes, chances are you don't exactly have a local host in your replica set configuration. So from that sense, you don't have to worry per se. But even then, at its core, the problem is not using localhost, is the fact that there is a discrepancy between the hostname in the Mongo URL and the hostname that is inside of the replica set config. So it doesn't matter if it is localhost. It could be demo, it could be ABCDEFGH, whatever,
Hmm.
right? We just need to make sure that those are the same, right? That is the point. So even if it is multiple nodes, it could be that one of your host names is not that container's container name or that container service name, right? It could be, and in that case, it will fail again if that is the primary node,
Hmm.
right? So that's why I said that the best action you could take, the better fix, is to fix your replica set configuration over using the direct connection. But again, direct connection has its place. It's really simple and quick. If you just have one replica set node, really I don't think you have to worry too much about it. Uh, but again, if you want to someday extend, in that case, you'd want to switch from localhost to something else anyway, right?
Okay.
So there are two options. Just you even have to figure out what you want and what you think is better for your use case.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm thinking if I have something else to share. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else right now. Okay, yeah, the new Docker Compose file. I think we can just quickly go through that one
Yeah, yeah.
once.
So it's easier, it's simpler now, right?
Yeah, it's much simpler. Um, so this is the new compose file is located in this repository. It's no longer in our primary Rocket.Chat repository. And my laptop's battery is 12%. Wow. Let's be quick. Uh, So this is the new compose file. Again, this version doesn't matter. Ignore it. Do not mention to me or anyone that my Docker Compose version is 3.7. We don't care. Why am I looking at this? Come on. We don't care. This is not the Docker Compose version. Okay, just ignore this one. Um, in here, one of the best things, in my opinion, is the traffic setting. It is extremely easy to use Rocket.Chat, like deploy Rocket.Chat with HTTPS as well, right? That is another thing that is kind of a good thing about Snap. Is, for example, in Snap, you can quickly enable
Yeah,
HTTPS by doing something like this.
with
Snap
Let's Encrypt,
set,
right?
yeah, server site URL equals to HTTPS something, right? For Snap, you just have to make sure that this is HTTPS. As long as this is HTTPS, Snap will start its whole HTTPS enabling process, certificate, reverse proxy, everything, right? That's just it. Just a single command, and it does everything.
Yeah.
Um, in case of Docker, everything is already in there. All you have to do is, along with this compose file, download this traffic template, and just deploy traffic. Just deploy traffic. You really don't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
Just once you have Rocket deployed, just deploy traffic, and you'll be good to go. You know. So yeah, there are some settings in .env that I'll get into, but overall, this is the templating that really makes it special. If you try to use the old compose file, this will not resolve. Right, this will end up being a very wrong Mongo URL. This whole nested variable resolving, this is not available in the old compose version.
Okay.
So this is
Also setting the default if not set, right? If the
exactly.
variable is not set, you set the default. Yeah, this was also new for me, and I think it's very interesting because you can easily change that using some environment file, right?
It makes things much easier, right?
Yeah. Basically,
Yeah,
you don't need to mess with the Docker file anymore, right? If you want to change
yeah,
anything, you change other place, and the Docker file is the same as the original one.
yeah. You just do it in the .env file, right?
Nice.
Okay, so this is the difference, biggest difference I would say. MongoDB, instead of using the official, we're just using the Bitnami. Where we already use the Bitnami image, it's
Thanks,
much better,
Bitnami.
by the way. Yeah, the Bitnami image is much better. And we already use it in our Helm chart, so why not use it here as well? This one, the main difference that makes it work out of the box is this one. So advertised hostname. Remember this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
this whole host part, this is what is called the advertising ID, right? How am I advertising myself, right? Because I can always connect to myself on localhost, but how do I want others to connect to me? That's the question. I can connect to me by localhost, but how do I want others to connect to me? I want others to connect to me, or I know that others are going to try to connect to me via MongoDB hostname, right? So I want to also expose myself as MongoDB, right? This is like I'm advertising myself as MongoDB. That's the whole thing. Kind of like if you have ever used Swarm, it's the advertising address, or similar to Kubernetes and everything, right? How we are advertising, or which interface I'm connecting to. That's the thing. So it is, you see, this is pointing to MongoDB, and the service name is MongoDB. But yeah, that's kind of the very gist. If you look at the env.example file, all you really need to do is, if you want to change anything in the Docker file, like Docker Compose file, just do it in env.env, right? You really shouldn't need to mess around with the Compose file at all. So release is the version defaults to latest. This is the thing. In here, you'll see that I have this whole Mongo URL and Mongo uplog URL, but ideally you shouldn't need to configure it at all. In the old compose file, if you had changed anything in MongoDB, you'd have to change it in the Mongo URL as well if it affects it. But for this one, all you really need to do is figure out, like, change the MongoDB specific ones. So for example, if you change the port at which MongoDB is running, right, from 27017 to, let's say, 11111, right? If you want to do that, you can just change like MongoDB underscore, I think, advertised port or something like that, some environment variable. Just change that, and the Rocket.Chat service template that will just pick that up directly, so you don't have to change the Mongo URL, the whole URL again,
Mhm.
right? That's one of the
It's the same. It's referencing the same variable, right? So
exactly, it is referencing the same thing, same variables to build the Mongo URL and Mongo upload URL directly, right? So
nice.
it really helps make things much easier. If you have traffic, you can set the traffic version and the domain name, just directly enter it here, the one that you want to use, and then let's say script email, then start a block traffic, and then that's it. Overall, as I said, Snap is sometimes it's easier, but really, Docker is not too far away. It's just
Yeah, it's
it's
way more
really
powerful, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good, awesome. So I think we have a lot covered today, and if you guys that we are going to spread this video all around. And if you still have any questions, any doubts, please feel free to go to our forums or reach us directly on open.rocket.chat. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah, that's it. I have to charge my laptop now real quick.
Okay. Thank you, Devdut. Very good. Thank you a lot. And see
Yeah,
you
it
around
was
on the next. Maybe we can do a deployment with Kubernetes and Docker and Snap and all that.
absolutely.
It's going to be awesome.
That sounds.
Okay.
I would like to go in the probably the Snap source code maybe if someone is interested.
Yeah, we can
If
do
someone
a
isn't,
deep dive into the this. Okay, so thank you,
how
and that's it for today. We're going to finish up with some more music. Let's do this,
I
and
think
that's
we
it.
could do it together. All right, guys. All
Bye
right, good.
bye.